just landed in Leadership and Enlightenment, a podcast where the guests are exceptional humans that have faced their fears to crest into their best selves, growing into a way they can help their communities, creating opportunities, and sharing their secrets and their tips that they learned along the way. Without further ado, here we are, my friends. Have a great time today and enjoy Leadership and Enlightenment.
Brother, I was in Vegas for 50 years. My dad and mom transplanted to Vegas when out of San Francisco. They were both with United Airlines, and they opened a hub around 70, and we ended up landing in Vegas and never left. Didn't know any different.
So you've seen some stuff. I would have loved to have been here in the Rat Pack days and the mob running days. They just said the city was so different and so more pleasant and fun and safe.
It's true. Yeah, before they put a barcode on everything in Las Vegas, it was a handshake. You know, we all had a handshake and we were friends and you got to know each other as a networking. I actually worked for a mobster at one point. I didn't know it until I was introduced to him. It was a Cosmos Uptown, an Italian restaurant at the Shark Club. And all the entertainers would go there after their events on Fridays and Saturdays. But back in those days, there was curiously like 7 clubs that kind of was the circle that they all would go to. Every different day of the week, they would attend one of the clubs or the restaurants. And so you kind of got to know everybody. It was very lucrative and it was very exciting to be around. I never really tuned into it. But the craziest part was when Vegas went through its transition and started sucking restaurants into the hotels. One week, the Mediterranean just burned down out of nowhere. Next week, it was Tony L's. It's burned down out of nowhere. You know what I mean? Like all these places just disappeared in less than 2 years and that whole scene changed.
Wow, that's crazy.
I know. It's great to talk to you today. I mean, honestly, I really appreciate you doing the podcast. I know you don't do a lot of these, and we were getting into some of your history about where you came from. This podcast is based essentially around the idea of leadership enlightenment, the fact that we bring light through our actions and our days, regardless of what we're doing. And you are an industry leader just by the idea of what I see in the small conversations that we've had. Why don't you set the audience up a little bit, where you came from and how you ended up getting close to where we're at?
Well, that's a long story. I'll make it an elevator version. But I grew up as a poor farm boy. You know, I couldn't sing. I couldn't dance. I was broke. I lived out in the middle of nowhere. But I don't know if it was because my father was a farmer and he installed that entrepreneurial drive inside of me. But I started working and making money in high school, working for the local neighbors and farmers. And then I decided I didn't like getting dirty. And I stumbled onto sound equipment and became a DJ in high school, started working and doing all the school dances and parties. And after graduation, I started to work at the local radio station. And that opened up an opportunity to not only leverage the cheap pay that I had at the station, but it was a lesson that I didn't realize at the time. But I look back now that sometimes you can be in a situation that may not be the greatest pay or the greatest working environment, but if you look back and reframe, there's always a way to leverage that. So they gave me free advertising as part of my salary. So what I did when I was doing the public dances for the KC Halls and the JCs and all of these nonprofit organizations, I would advertise my show on the radio and I would draw a larger crowd. And because of that, I was able to start charging more, and people knew that my shows would always be the most fun and the largest and the most crowded shows. So I was able to leverage that relationship at the radio station, even though it wasn't a lot of pay. And then that general manager was the kind that mentored me, taught me the business of sales, promotions, relationship building, and eventually sent for me in Detroit, which was a much larger station. And then that's when I left small town Missouri to Detroit, working nightclubs and radio in that area until 1990 when the auto industry took a dump. So again, not realizing at the time because I was so young, but that was my pandemic, you know?
Yeah, you had to reset.
Everything shut down. So the clash, should I stay or should I go? So I'm like, I'm out of here. So I moved to Florida to pursue entertainment. And then in Florida, I was going to do cruise ships. So you move where the target friendly audience is, right? That's where the cruise ships are, only to find this whole new world of meetings and events, corporate entertainment, corporate meetings, which I'd never heard of. And when you get in that as an entertainer or as a speaker or as an educator, when you get in that lane, you bypass the nightclubs and you can triple and quadruple your salary, especially, for those
Yeah.
of you that remember the days before 9/11, when
Yeah.
there wasn't procurement, you didn't have to get permission or 3 proposals to see who you needed to do business with and that sort of thing. And from that,
Welcome to my
it
world.
was just always pushing the envelope and trying to be better.
Yeah. Well, just to kind of reflect back a little bit and unpack some of that, you have a drive within you that's natural that brings you through your life and challenges you to excel. You were an entrepreneur before you were even out of high school, obviously, in the way that you leverage your relationships. And these are things later in skill set that we realize they're either natural or you're learning them. Did you ever feel like you had something inside of you that was kind of coaching you along the way and inspiring you to do these different things? Or was it always just from you on the outside wanting whatever was next in your career to grow?
I think it was always, I was, believe it or not, the class clown and the show off in school. I was always pushing the envelope or going up to the line, but not necessarily crossing the line, because I wasn't that person that, was in trouble or always getting detention sort of thing. I was just, enough to get called out and to be noticed. And I didn't realize that at the time. And we were talking a little bit earlier about the Dr. Benjamin Hardy book, 10X is easier than X. It's finding something that is either natural to you or a drive inside of you, and then you just double down on that.
Isn't that
So
cool?
for years, I thought being a DJ and working radio and nightclubs was just fun, and it was never really going to be a career. But when I moved to Florida, when I did that pivot from Detroit, when the economy took a dump, to Florida, that opened up a whole new world of possibility.
Interesting. Do you think it was because you committed to doing it that it started to follow you and offer this opportunity? I mean, I take this back into the idea of me leaving my corporate job. I saw everything much like a ladder. You're trying to get to this place. I was always motivated by money. I was trying to raise my family. I left a lot off the table, and I found myself in a very uncomfortable place of life when I finally got there. And now I see it more like the rings in a tree. We're always in the place we're supposed to be in. And there's these little helpful things that push us along, whether it's a whisper in our ear or if it's effort that we make. And I noticed too that when I put aside my comfort and took a step forward in my life, in my corporate career, later my revenues always doubled up. It was funny how that worked, but I started to catch on to the fact that if I was willing to jump into that fear or that opportunity, that there was something else that was going with me and it was also supporting it.
I want to tag on what you said. I think what you just said is exactly what I speak about in my presentation that I call the rock star mindset. Use fear as your GPS. So many people run away from fear and they stay in the status quo, and they keep getting what they've always gotten because they keep doing what they've always done, as the phrase goes. But I think you had that bug or that drive, whatever motivated you, whether it was money or whether better life for your family and for yourself. And I think that's inside of all of us. Just so many people choose not to act on it. No right or wrong, but
Yeah.
there's garage bands, there's cover bands, and there's rock stars. And you have to decide where you want to be. So to kind of answer your question, I think that good was not always good enough for me. I would achieve a goal and then I would immediately set another goal. And I learned that during my marathon training. You have a goal and you train and you train and you train, and then you achieve that goal. And I just said, well, I'll take a couple weeks off. A couple weeks turned into a couple months. And then before you know it, I lost that drive and vision. And I realized I got to set another goal. So I started signing up for more races. And it's that way in life. You always have to have something in front of you to focus on.
Interesting. Yeah, absolutely. And how you focus on it, I think, is one of the bigger traction points. I use this term, if you've spoken to anybody like yourself, they're going to say, my successes in life didn't happen exactly the way I expected them to. And so why do we wake up every day expecting anything? Why not just section the time off that you're going to invest into this thing that you're going to do that day, know that you'll do it, and then allow the day to also support you in the way that you're handling yourself.
So are you telling me if you want to exceed your expectations, just lower your standards?
No. I'm saying allow this bigger idea to work with you. I think that there's there's goals set every day that you set. There's this idea of what you want to achieve. There's these benchmarks and these things that have to be done. But let's just say that phone call didn't happen exactly on time and that person was 30 minutes later. Take the call. Don't be so stubborn in your schedule that 30 minutes changed the way you saw that relationship. Understand the universe is working around you in a way that is connecting these things, and we can respect the fact that maybe that 5 phone calls that you expected to make that day that were going to create outcome, they didn't happen, but two different handoffs happened by these ideas of referrals. And so was that day any less valuable than the other? It probably wasn't. And it was because you were investing yourself in this hierarchy of your life, and you were putting time in with people and coaching them and sharing with them along the way. And then that also supports this idea of goal setting, taking yourself to that next step and growing, but not allowing these daily efforts to determine necessarily how you feel about yourself. But keep your mental momentum inside every day, that you're progressing, that you're moving, and you can actually celebrate these smaller wins too.
Yeah, you have to set your own goal or your own light so that you have a direction. I think it was Zig Ziglar or Brian Tracy said, if you don't know where you're going, be careful, you might end up someplace else.
Which is
And
what
it's so
happened with
true.
me.
It's so true, especially, for your listeners that are in the meetings and events world, our MPIers and our NACE and our ILEA members out there. We get so caught up in working in our business. Sometimes we don't have time to work on our business because we get caught up in the day to day and we forget about looking towards our light or our goal. And it doesn't always happen organically. If we're
Right.
looking down here and we need to look up here, we're still probably going to stay down here.
Do you find that you create, I do, I create different analogies and mental perspectives that I talk to myself through during the day to relieve some of these issues of FOMO and imposter syndrome and all these things that we tend to like categorize within our lives and get mucky over, when really we could just focus on this idea that we're in a magical place that's going to grow around us and we can learn from it as long as we have that time.
Yeah, I didn't realize that imposter syndrome was such a factor in today's world till in one of my mastermind groups, one of my speaker colleagues speaks on imposter syndrome. And especially in the meetings and events world, we really a lot of times wear our clients or our events on our sleeve and can take things personal. But when you're doing a live event, live performance, things are going to happen. I was backstage one time with one of the sports broadcasters. His name was Boomer. I can't think of his last name right now. Yeah. And I would joke, I was the MC and I would joke with him. I'm like, hey, Boomer, don't panic. We're all counting on you, using the old airplane line. And he didn't even blink an eye. And he looked right at me and said, Mark, when you're prepared, there's no need to worry about panic.
That's right.
And I thought about that, and you're right. In the rock star world, we call it rehearse your mistakes. So when I walk, I always do sound check and rehearsal. I make friends with the stage. I go up and down the stairs. I look at the front row, besides just checking the sound and audio. I think about what would happen, especially in today's world, what would happen if an intruder came and disrupted the meeting, or, heaven forbid, there was an active shooter or someone had a cardiac arrest or a heckler. When you practice and rehearse your mistakes, then from a performer's point of view, they don't look like a mistake, but also it's just another way to serve your audience in the event of some sort of emergency.
Yeah. And having trust in yourself that your experiences will dictate when it's necessary to do that, and just allow yourself to use your instincts that same way.
Hey,
That's
it's the beauty of growing old. I used to dread growing old as a younger person, but now all of the wisdom and experiences that I've logged through the years, it's priceless. And I'm sure you feel the same way with your run in Las Vegas and with MGM and Bellagio. What great wisdom you've accumulated through the years.
Yeah. And you don't know it when you're accumulating it. That's really the lesson to be learned. Like if I was to go back, I would have just taken a minute or two to smell the roses a little longer, because geez, it really does work. This stereotypical idea of invest yourself into what you love, your passion. And I say lately, like if you invest yourself into what you would consider your hobby, most of us discount that, thinking there's no value in it, but that's really what we're saying. And I'm always enamored by representatives like yourself that know what they want to do at a very young age. Really starts, and I've interviewed, sports professionals. I've interviewed like yourself, talented entertainers. And it was something, a calling or a feeling that, yeah, that got something right here. I was the opposite of that. I was one of these people that was floating around in life for about 20 years, not realizing I was actually decent at doing anything. And it found me finally. And I went through the same lessons that you had gone through to get to this place of knowing and moving forward. But it's always outstanding to see where it keeps growing. And so share with us a little bit more about the next couple steps in your career, my friend, because we haven't even gotten close yet.
No, I think every stage, since I'm in the music world, I talk about different stages. So I think every stage in my life has always been a learning opportunity, and it's school. I never went to college. I was a C student in school, but a few years ago when I was coaching with someone, I was coaching with someone, and he said, "You have a secret weapon that many do not possess and would love to have, and it will take you so much further than education, and that is likability." And,
Likability.
we're in the relationship building business, and that's what I tell to the younger people, with AI and people that are worried about AI and technology and taking their jobs. And do I need to learn this? Do I need to learn that? It's really about building that relationship and having that superpower likability. And I do believe there's a certain amount of likability that can be taught,
But
but
authenticity and likability cannot. And that's what I can see what you're saying now. I never considered that a value or a talent, but I do see that in myself as well. And over the years, yeah, likability really did catalyze my career immensely in client relationships and building relationships and promotion and understanding that even the world I'm in now as a meeting broker, my clients don't want to travel with somebody they don't like. I mean, how unfortunate would that be if you're stuck for 2 days with somebody that you don't even want to talk to? So there's got to be this place inside of it that all comes together.
and for me, likability presented opportunity. And what I mean by that is because I had that energy, that charisma, that superpower, people would always approach me. They wanted to be around me. They wanted to pull that energy into them. But it also presented many job opportunities. I really have never had to look for a job before I started doing full-time entrepreneurship, because people are like, "Oh, you would be great at this. I got a position for you. Let's do this."
That's awesome.
And I think that's a great lesson for anyone, but especially the younger generation, is that, yeah, you need a certain amount of knowledge, but double down on your relationships and your likability, and you'll attract people to you. It's that whole law of attraction.
So cool. So cool. Where did it attract you next, my friend? I know you were sharing with me that you had some amazing mentors after your cruise line adventure and that you kind of dug into there.
Yeah, I was introduced to NSA back in 2003, the National Speakers Association, where I met an iconic speaker who was speaking. I was the MC, and he saw something, that likability. He saw something into me and introduced me to the organization and said, "You're way more than an entertainer. You're way more than an MC." And that's when I got the Tony Robbins bug and started going to his seminars and presentations. And even though I didn't really have the money at the time, he got about $25,000 of my money back in the late
Wow.
90s. But
Yeah.
it was a great investment, because not only was I able to use it for personal development, but I was able to start incorporating it in my presentations and
Hmm.
in my entertainment. And like
Yeah.
I shared with you, I was kind of known as the motivational MC or the motivational DJ at the time. And there again, setting yourself apart,
Hmm.
just like I talk about Kiss and their makeup. All the other bands were on stage with their jeans and t-shirts being artists, but Kiss created a disruption. And you look
Yeah.
about any business, Steve Jobs created a disruption, Elon Musk created a disruption, Bill Gates created a disruption, Jeff Bezos, and those are the big global names
Hmm.
that we know. But there's so many more, in our events and meeting world, that have created disruptions. And, that's how you get seen.
You know, and that idea of disruption is not built around being perfect at what you do either. It's about deciding that you're going to be your way of doing whatever this is, regardless of your audience around you, and taking those talents and really diving in with both feet and not looking back, and then seeing how that actually brings itself forward. I got to witness an entertainer one time lift the room. and light in a way that they had the best night of their lives. It was in Cancun. And I asked myself, I'm like, is this exclusive to people with talent or entertainers? Or is there an opportunity for any Joe in the world to actually lift light just by being in their best authentic self? And that's the experiment with the podcast and the life that we live around us. I found that you can affect the same. And you have this opportunity if you believe that you're actually in that place to do it. And much like you were saying with that talent of being likability, if you're invested into your energy, they also can see that around you. That vibration is very evident.
And it's like a muscle. The more you use it, the better you get at it.
Yeah.
A great example, Robert Fripp, who was the founder and guitarist for King Crimson, which was an old 60s band, same era as the Beatles and the Stones. He didn't pick up a guitar till he was 15. And he just decided, I want to learn to play the guitar. And he spent thousands and thousands of hours of immersement playing the guitar. Never really had a passion like Eddie Van Halen that, picked it up when he was 3 years old. And because of that, he became, according to Rolling Stones, one of the top 50 guitarists in the world on the planet. So you don't necessarily have to be born with likability or born with the entertainment bug or the disruption bug. It can be a skill, but some of us are going to have to work harder at it.
Harder than others. Yeah. When I got to touch on that one, when you said that, it hit me. I felt the shivers around it because it was a night 8 years ago or 9 years ago when I was at the gym where I decided to invest my 10,000 hours into myself. And I learned that you don't have to be an expert if you're willing to do the work. There are others out there that have shared information, books and experiences and great conversations like this that we're having that you learn from. But it's really about, taking that step in yourself and realizing that, like, I can put these 10,000, I can learn this, I can be dedicated to this. It's not going to happen in 6 months. It's not going to happen a year. It won't even happen in 3 years, but it's going to happen if you continue to look into it. And then all of a sudden you're like the band you're talking about. You're in a place that you're actually doing something that, and I was faced with this as a young kid too, in high school, especially in sports. I see representatives that were very talented. They could run faster. They were stronger. I wasn't built that way. And I had to start to associate, like, how do I fit into this if I'm not in that model? And I think that's what we're talking about now. And I'm going to move you forward, brother, because I really loved where this story ended up. You eventually ended up in Las Vegas.
Yeah, because again, you hear the phrase never burn bridges because of a past relationship from an old agent in Orlando back in the late 90s when I was doing the corporate tour. He got a job as entertainment director at the Venetian. The GM at the Venetian at the time decided to bring the Rock of Ages show because it was a 80s show. Most
I remember it.
Corporate America were children of the 80s. So let's, bring that to the Venetian. And then he took it to the next level and said, well, this show is about this fictitious place called the Bourbon Room, or in real life, it was Whiskey A Go-Go in California. Let's make our own and keep them on property and get a few more dollars out of them. So it was because of a past relationship. This person immediately lit up and said, I know the perfect person. I know the perfect guy if he'll move up here from Florida. So that's when I got the call. And while it was fearful to leave my comfort zone, I had a good life. I was making good money. I enjoyed what I did. Vegas was always a bucket list early on in the early 90s. And then I'm thinking, I'm a hypocrite if I don't face my fear and use my fear as GPS. So I took that leap of faith and I rented my home. I sold almost everything, sold my car. Luckily, because we live in such an amazing industry, I already had friends in Vegas. So Tommy Pass, I don't know if you know Tom Pass with
Tom Pass is one of my best friends. I love Tommy. Tommy's over with MGM Resorts Events.
Yeah.
Tom Pass and I go way back. He's got the Roy Orbison beard. Tommy's the man.
He was my roommate for a year. I knew Tommy from when he used to work with John Daly Events out of California in Santa Barbara. And he's like, man, I'm looking for a roommate. I'll rent you a room. So he, introduced me to his circle and his friends, and it was a great relationship. We're still great friends. And then after
Tommy and I ran into each other today, we would spend 20 minutes with each other. I adore Tom. He taught me a lot about the industry too. Back in the day, I was at Bellagio. We do a lot of events together. And he would come in and he could see a room from what was needed, not what you could spend on it. And my clients loved his efficiencies in realizing Tommy was one of the first people I ever met that brought value to everything he did, and probably one of the coolest guys. I mean, talk about cool, man. That guy has got a tone to him for sure.
And he had that vision, just like, you and I have the likability gift. He had that vision of being able to see the end product of a room or an event. And he was a man of integrity because he wouldn't settle. He's like, this is the vision. This is what you want. If you can't afford it, then maybe you should find somebody else, because I'm not going to risk the integrity of my reputation and my vision. Just like
if he hears this podcast, shout out to Tommy. I can remember a phone call every time Tom will call me with something. He goes, "Hey brother, I got something to talk to you about." It would turn into this great place, man. I love him. But keep going, dude, because I mean, your experiences are definitely way past this relationship as well.
Well, once I realized that the show was going to be around longer than I rented my own home and eventually bought a home, and I just fell in love with Vegas. And there was a bartender in the room that I was running that introduced me to a very unique church in town. I was looking for a church, looking for a community. It was called Verve, and their motto was church for people who don't like church.
Oh, I like that.
Kind of a rock and roll church. So I checked it out, and it was great because the person that put the church there was trying to cater to the industry people that other churches may or may not want. So we had entertainers, we had, working girls, we had crazy pimps, drug addicts, recovery people, and they all came to this church, and eventually most of them got saved and were able to start a new life because somebody there, that was a disruption. We were talking about disruption, Kiss putting on their makeup. This pastor was willing to go against the norm of the contemporary churches and do something different. And in the 13 years that church was around, they ended up with 587 baptisms, which is crazy.
That's so cool. It's still there, right?
No, they did not survive the shutdown and the pandemic, but again, they had 13-year run, and that pastor's launched into a whole new different area of service and ministry. And I think that's our lesson, just like we our industry fast forwarded during the pandemic, what we had been playing around with online trainings and the Zooms and even the podcast that we were probably going to eventually do in a couple of years, we did in 6 months because we had at the pivot, and that's where we are today. And fast forward. And also it made us better people because when we used to book out a year and a half in advance, now I'm sure you see it, people were calling 6 months, 3 months, and you're like, well, I got to find the hotels. I got to find the hotel.
1 month. Yeah. You're like, wow, I'm booking ski trips right now up in Vail for like 2 weeks from now, which I think is crazy that a group would, take that time to do it. Love the fact that they're going, but yeah, it is, they have to react because budgets weren't approved until recently.
So I think the message there is like, if it's scary or fearful, say yes to it. What's the worst that can happen?
Exactly. Did the church teach you any practices, or were there any practices in the church that helped you find your center or share that? Like, obvious to me, looking from the outside from the story, the church was opening hearts, letting light into these individuals and allowing them to start to grow within their own light, which I believe is a practice. It's an individual's effort to get in there and really work through that. I like to joke a lot because I was raised Catholic, but I like to joke a lot. Like, why can't we just not talk for 20 minutes in church and all spend time together? Why does it have to always be somebody talking to you? Is there more an investment in community that can be, looked at and time spent with your eyes closed, maybe holding hands? I don't know. I'm not the expert in this scenario, but it just seems to me like we're leaving out the whole purpose of going.
Well, and I think, there's a lesson everywhere. I think what that church taught me is that God is for everyone, or we actually did a series called God for the Rest of Us, which was that message. But it also, you have to have humility, especially when you're in a position. We in the speakers industry, we take the stage as a privilege. When we're up in front of 13 people or 5,000 people, that's a privilege. We're not there to serve ourselves. We're there to serve others. Just like this podcast is a privilege. The technology to produce this podcast is a gift. Your 10 years in the meetings and events industry as a corporate guy is a gift to be able to share with others. And I think We have to be humble. We have to put ourselves on a level of everyone else before we can receive wisdom from them. You know,
So sad.
it's like,
Yeah.
what can I learn from, someone who's been on the streets? What can I learn from a
Hmm.
homeless person? What can I learn from an entertainer?
So true.
We can't have that attitude that we know it all.
Yeah. I always say, like, if you're trying to find yourself, you can't find it pouring soup. You got to find it having a conversation with somebody eating lunch.
That's true. It's all
Dig
about the
in.
relationship.
Dig in. So tell
People
us about where you're heading to, brother. Where's your life heading to now?
I think the next stage for me, I mean, right now, I feel like we're in momentum. Each year, we keep increasing the number of events we do. We raise our fees. We're reaching more people. Still having a blast. I was able to hire my wife away from her corporate job, so
Awesome.
we've been working together 3.5 years and loving it. We're able to travel together. No one cares about the business
That's
more
the
than
magic,
she
brother.
does. We
Yeah.
joke I'm the talent and she's the business, but
Yeah.
we realize that this is just a training ground for our next stage in life. And while I'm not for sure exactly what that is, I believe it is. And what's on my vision board is putting on some sort of family counseling ministries around the country, or marriage
I love that.
retreats, couples
Yeah.
retreats, because being an entertainer, and I didn't get married till I was 55.
Wow.
I had a lot of training, husband training, that my wife had to do, and it was
Yeah.
very challenging, and I did a lot of stupid things, but she stuck it out. And because of those things, I think it's things we can experiences we can share with others, so that hopefully they don't make the same mistakes, and we can
Dude, I would
keep.
love to join you on that mission. If you need, somebody to come with you and join one of your retreats and speak to it. I've been married for 36 years, and I can tell you, yeah, this is a work in progress constantly. My wife and I have looked back a couple times and said, where was the instruction for when the kids went off to college? What did you do then? Like, there was nothing for us. We had to figure it out as we went. And now that we're grandparents, look, there's not a lot of models out there to look at and how to be the best grandparent. And I realized right at the beginning, oh, this isn't a given. My granddaughter isn't going to just jump on my lap because I'm not her parents. And I had to take a position and learn and earn. And I think all this is valuable when you're sharing in that family setting. Man, that would shed some seriously cool light.
But we'll have to have a off-air conversation about that,
Yeah.
because I've got a few plans on paper and in my mind. I know it's not the timing isn't there yet, but again, we always have to be looking forward
Yep.
to our next move, our next goal.
Yep.
Otherwise, we get stagnant, and then we get in that funnel. Like I said after my marathon, well, I'll take a break. Then that break leads into a longer period of time before you know it.
You're
You don't know.
toast. You got to work your way back. It sucks. All right. Well, let everybody know how they can find you, my friend. I'll have it in the show notes, but this has been an amazing conversation today. I loved it.
Well, thanks. It's been fun, and I think we need to meet for lunch the next time you're in Vegas.
I'll be down next week. Let's figure it out.
Okay. Yeah, let's try to get something on the books. But for me, very simple. Just Google Marvellous Mark, however you spell it. I own all the URLs. I actually spell it a little bit differently. It was a marketing tip back in the day. I spell it Marvelless Mark, Marve, and people always wonder and ask me, why do you call yourself Marvelous? Because you give so much more. And back in the day, as a single entertainer and DJ, I would always give a money back guarantee against any 5 to 10 piece band, that I would have more interaction, more entertainment, and more fun. So less gives you more.
Yeah.
And then from a marketing point of view, for those of you that are going to be starting new businesses, when you misspell something, it's easier to trademark and copyright.
Well, good one. I like that. That's a good one.
MarvellousMark.com, on Instagram, Facebook, all the social medias. And no matter how you spell it, I'll pop up, and we look forward to coming to a stage near you.
Awesome, brother. All
Great,
right.
bro.
Well, until we talk next. Well, there we go. Another amazing example of the universe working in its magnificent way today. Appreciate you showing up, and look forward to seeing you again at Leadership and Enlightenment.